In this video, we're going to be breaking down 5 WNBA games happening on May 27, 2026, and providing you with a side pick and a total pick for every matchup. 10 free picks in total. As usual, stick around until the end because you won't want to miss out on anything. Phoenix Mercury versus New York Liberty. Phoenix rolls into Brooklyn tonight carrying real baggage, and the script almost writes itself if you only glance at the surface. 3 losses in a row. A heartbreak in Atlanta on Sunday where they coughed up a fourth-quarter lead in the dying minutes. ESPN's power rankings yanked them from 4th down to 14th in roughly 2 weeks. Easy fade, right? Slow down. There's a quiet truth this rivalry keeps whispering, and it's that the Mercury have been a genuine nuisance for the Liberty. Phoenix dumped New York out of the playoffs last fall, and they've taken 3 of the last 4 meetings between these two. That's not a coincidence or a hot streak. That's a stylistic mismatch where the way Alyssa Thomas bends the floor and the way veterans like DeWanna Bonner pick their spots tends to chew up whatever defensive scheme the current Liberty staff has been cooking. Now point your eyes at the other bench. Brooklyn just dropped 3 straight on its own hardwood, with their record sitting at 3-4. Their franchise point guard's season debut on Sunday ended in an ugly 15-point home loss to Dallas, and the team has already slapped her with an injury management designation since. Their summer addition out of the front court is still figuring out where she fits inside a brand new head coach's system under Chris DeMarco. The team holding home court here is not a unit firing on every cylinder right now, and a wounded visitor with a chip on its shoulder is exactly the wrong opponent to host while half your starters are still negotiating roles in real time. Throw in the fact that Phoenix is in the unusual spot of being doubted nationally despite winning the head-to-head story for almost a calendar year, and you've got a recipe for the kind of stubborn underdog night where the visitor refuses to go quietly. As our first pick for this matchup, the Phoenix Mercury to cover the spread as underdogs is our full game side pick. Here's a wrinkle that the algorithms forecasting fireworks are conveniently ignoring. When these two franchises share a floor, the scoreboard tends to take a nap. Roll back to last September's playoff series and every single one of those 3 games finished beneath the posted number. Stretch the lens wider and the trend grows even louder, with this matchup cashing under in roughly 7 of the last 10 head-to-head meetings. Some pairings just produce grinding, slow-motion basketball, and this rivalry has quietly become one of those weird recurring marriages where the points refuse to show up no matter how loud the buildup gets. Layer the current context on top. The home side has dipped into the 70s in 3 of its last 4 outings, with new lineup pieces still memorizing where they're supposed to stand inside an offense that was redrawn this offseason. Possessions are burned figuring out who runs the second action, and that's the kind of friction that quietly shaves a bucket or 2 off the final tally on every quarter. The visiting side has also flipped its tempo dial noticeably lower this season, leaning on half-court possessions while their staff scrambles to plug leaks on a defense that does not resemble last year's top 5 group. A slower-paced road offense plus a host that's been ice-cold from the floor adds up to a game environment that simply does not invite a track meet. Sure, there's a fair counter-argument that 2 struggling defenses can occasionally trade haymakers, and that risk deserves respect. But the cleaner red is 2 clubs still hunting for offensive rhythm inside a rivalry whose history laughs in the face of high totals on a night neither team has been giving fans reason to expect an eruption. The number is begging for a lean and the matchup's fingerprints all point the same direction. As our second pick for this matchup, under the projected total is our full game total pick. Quick commercial break. You know the deal. If you want to get our exclusive best sport picks to take things to the next level, then check out our Patreon in the link down below where we offer our best single picks, parlay picks, and much more. Go check it out. Commercial break over. Now back to the game. Toronto Tempo versus Chicago Sky. Wednesday night at Wintrust Arena carries this strange heaviness, the kind that creeps in when a home crowd has watched their own squad get pushed around twice in their own building and the fans are just about ready to start booing the schedule itself. The Chicago Sky opened their first homestand of the year stumbling out of the gate, dropping back-to-back games inside their own walls, and that's the type of bruise that tends to wake a roster up, especially one that spent the entire offseason completely rebuilding its identity from the ground up. Tyler Marsh has been juggling rotations like a chef testing a brand new recipe, and tonight he draws a matchup where the ingredients finally line up in his favor. Toronto rolled in here straight off a head-scratching loss to the Portland Fire, the other brand new franchise on the block. And that's the kind of result that lingers in a young team's huddle for days, especially when you're staring down a road game at a desperate favorite the very next outing. Sandy Brondello's bunch has shown plenty of fight in their inaugural run, no question, but their interior rotation has been chewed up by injuries, and that happens to be the exact zone where the Chicago Bigs want to operate when the lights come on. Camila Cardoso owning the paint against a wounded front court is the kind of mismatch coaches dream about, and the home floor has been waiting all month for her to plant her flag in front of a fed-up crowd and remind the league who's supposed to run this building. You also can't gloss over the late-game calm Chicago brings in the backcourt, the kind of poise that comes from veterans who've played in actual pressure moments and walked out the other side. The number itself is what really sells it. 4.5 points feels almost generous when the favorite is at home, has bigger interior personnel, and is facing a road-weary expansion side that just got handled by another expansion side. The counter-argument exists. Sure, Toronto has been a respectable cover team through the early weeks, and they've got scorers who can heat up fast, but cover trends tend to fade quick when the underlying matchup leans this hard one way. This whole thing shapes up like the type of evening where a hungry home favorite finally gets back to feeling like itself, plants its flag, and gives a frustrated fan base a reason to actually stick around through the final buzzer. As our first pick for this matchup, the Chicago Sky to cover the spread as favorites is our full game side pick. The total floating at 168.5 has this almost shy quality to it, like the books are nervously testing whether you'll actually believe in what both of these clubs have been doing to scoreboards. Toronto's road games have been turning into shootouts on a regular basis, with Brittany Sykes treating the rim like it owes her rent money and Marina Mabrey catching fire on this trip in a way that single-handedly tilts entire quarters. There's a rhythm to the tempo offense when it's clicking, a willingness to push tempo and let it rip from deep, and that style has a way of dragging opponents into a faster game whether they planned for it or not. Wintrust Arena hasn't exactly turned into a defensive cathedral this season either. The building's already hosted plenty of scoreboard fireworks, and the home crowd actually seems to feed off the energy of an open, flowing kind of game. Both rotations are stretched thin from the injury bug, and while that might sound like a reason for the pace to slow, reality usually flips that script on its head. Tired legs in the third quarter mean lazy closeouts, missed rotations, and easy looks at the rim that pile up faster than coaches care to admit on the post-game podium. The tempo run is style built around ball movement and perimeter touches, and the Sky perimeter defense has been letting clean shots fly at a rate that should put a smile on any total bettor's face. There's also a young Toronto guard like Kiki Rice settling into expanded minutes, and when a younger player gets comfortable on a fast offense, the points pile up in chunks rather than trickling in one at a time. You could push back here and argue that early season grind games sometimes turn into mud, that an expansion club on the road might come out flat, that nerves and turnovers could choke off the scoring. Every piece of recent film tells a different story though. The buckets keep falling, the pace keeps cooking, and a number this size starts to feel like an underestimate of what both of these rosters are wired to do once the ball goes up. The whole night carries the shape of a track meet between two squads who'd rather trade haymakers than slug it out in the trenches. As our second pick for this matchup, over the projected total is our full game total pick. Atlanta Dream versus Minnesota Lynx. Atlanta walks into Target Center on opening night, gets punched in the mouth right out of the gate, falls behind by double digits, and still walks out with a 1-point win. That's the snapshot of who this dream team really is in year 2 of the Carl Smesko era. Gritty, balanced, and built to grind out road wins against opponents who look meaner on paper. Sitting at 4-1-0, this is the only squad in the entire WNBA without at least 2 losses. And they didn't fluke their way there. They've earned it by punishing the offensive glass while their perimeter group keeps generating the kind of looks that make a stat geek smile. Angel Reese has already turned the painted area into her personal construction site, and rookie Medina Okot has given the coaching staff the rim protection and vertical spacing this roster was begging for a season ago. Now glance across the floor. Minnesota is still trying to hold a front court together with athletic tape and sheer stubbornness. Nafisa Collier isn't cleared for on-court basketball activities until early June at the soonest. Emma Tsechava is gone for the rest of the year with a torn ACL, and Dorka Juhas is still parked on the sideline with a right foot issue and no return date. That's 3 rotation pieces stripped out of Cheryl Reeves' front court menu, including the player who has been the entire identity of this franchise the past few seasons. Reeve has done her usual coaching magic, no question, and the Lynx are sitting at 4-2-0 with a guard-driven approach that's outrun expectations. But ask yourself who actually wins the rebounding war tonight. Ask yourself who slows down the bench wave when Naz Hillman or Isabel Borlese catches a hot hand off the pine. Sure, you can wave the revenge flag. Target Center will be electric. The home crowd remembers letting one slip on opening night, and Minnesota was the trendy preseason title pick before that ankle saga got messy. That's the steam keeping this line from being noticeably bigger. The Dream aren't a flawless cover machine either. Their lone loss came at home to Vegas, and they snuck past Phoenix by 2 over the weekend. But the matchup math keeps pointing in one direction. Atlanta beat this same Minnesota group up on the boards in the opener, attacked the rim without fear, and still finished off the game with the buzzer-beating stop. Run that same recipe back inside a building where the host roster's interior depth is even thinner than it was 16 days ago, and the pattern just keeps repeating itself. As our first pick for this matchup, the Atlanta Dream to cover the spread as favorites is our full game side pick. Now flip the channel over to the scoreboard side of this thing, because tonight's game has a fingerprint, and it really isn't subtle. The first meeting on May 9th piled up 181 combined points in a regulation game where neither side even shot particularly well. Totals like that don't happen by accident. They happen because both teams genuinely want to run. Cheryl Reeve has handed the offensive keys to rookie Olivia Miles, the second overall pick out of TCU, and she's scored in double figures in every single professional appearance so far, reportedly the longest such streak by a Lynx rookie since Simone Augustus way back in 2006. Pair her with Courtney Williams and Kayla McBride, and you've got 3 starting guards each averaging right around 15 points apiece. That's a backcourt engineered to fire away, push transition, and live in the open court. Minnesota's offensive pace has been north of 89 points per game through the season's early window, and they just dropped a buck on Toronto in a home blowout earlier this month. Atlanta's offense is the perfect dance partner for that style because the shot diet is built almost entirely around threes and attacks at the rim, the 2 highest value buckets in basketball. You don't see a lot of mid-range grind out of this Dream roster. You see pace, perimeter chucking, and lots of free throws on downhill rim drives. Ryan Howard already buried 6 threes against Phoenix on Sunday. Alicia Gray has been a knockdown perimeter scorer all month long, and Tahina Paopao has stepped into the second-year leap a lot of folks were forecasting back in the spring. Stack in the steady second-chance economy this team manufactures by crashing the offensive boards, and you've got bonus possessions piled on top of an already high-tempo affair. More possessions, more threes, weakened interior resistance. The scoreboard tends to know where to go in that situation. Now, the honest pushback. Atlanta's road win at Dallas earlier this month finished in the 140s, and Sunday's Phoenix game stayed under what was a fairly inflated total. Fair points, both of them, but those were a half-court grind and a slug-it-out wing matchup respectively. Tonight is a different animal. Minnesota doesn't have a paint protector who scares anybody right now, and the Dream don't really have anyone who can stay in front of a Lynx guard rotation that's greenlit to bomb away from deep. When these two offenses ran into each other 3 weeks back, the scoreboard operator barely got a coffee break. There's no convincing reason to expect this rematch, with even less interior resistance available to Minnesota, to magically transform itself into a quiet, ugly, low-scoring affair. As our second pick for this matchup, over the projected total is our full game total pick. Connecticut Sun versus Portland Fire. There's a rhythm expansion teams find midway through their first month, and the Portland Fire are catching that wave right when it matters most. Picture the scene at the Moda Center on Wednesday night. A franchise reborn after a 24-year absence, fresh off a road trip that flipped early season expectations on their head, with more than 10,000 season ticket holders ready to lose their voices on a school night. That's the energy walking into this one. Now imagine the other locker room. Game 5 of a brutal 5-game road swing that's already chewed them up. A squad that flew up the coast after getting blitzed by 27 points in San Francisco 2 nights ago, dealing with an interior rotation that's been a revolving door all month, carrying a record of 1-7 that tells you most of what you need to know about how this start has gone. The deeper story here is that these two clubs already shared the floor 9 days ago in this exact building, and the home side needed every last possession to escape with a 1-point win. That's the case people will lean on for Connecticut keeping it tight again. Fair argument. But here's the wrinkle that gets glossed over. That game came when Portland was still sorting out which lineup combinations actually worked before the roster trim, before the developmental pieces got activated, before they ripped off back-to-back wins in Toronto and Brooklyn to flip their first ever road trip into a winning one. A different version of this team walked onto the floor on May 18th than the one tipping off Wednesday. Meanwhile, Connecticut's exhaustion isn't only about jet fuel and time zones. It's mental. They're staring down their fifth opponent in 9 nights, with one of their interior anchors in and out of the lineup, an offensive rating that sits dead last in the league, and zero margin for error against a rested home favorite peaking at exactly the right time. The kind of spot where struggling teams don't simply lose, they unravel. Rested, hot, in front of a building that's been waiting since 2002 to scream its lungs out, against an opponent limping into the finale of a road trip from hell. The math practically writes itself. As our first pick for this matchup, the Portland Fire to cover the spread as favorites is our full game side pick. Pace. That's the word you scribble on a sticky note and slap on your monitor before locking this number in. Both clubs in this matchup love to run, and the numbers underneath the standings tell the real story. Connecticut might be sitting near the bottom of the league record-wise, but their tempo lands them top 3 in the entire WNBA for possessions per game. They don't walk the ball up. They don't grind possessions. They turn the floor into a track meet because, honestly, that's the only style a young rebuilding roster has a real shot with on a nightly basis. And Portland feeds right into that profile. This is a roster built around perimeter shooting, sitting second in the league in 3-point attempts per game, living and breathing on rapid ball movement and quick triggers from beyond the arc. Layer that style on top of one of the more generous defenses in the W, a unit currently parked toward the bottom of the league in opponent field goal percentage and opponent 3-point percentage, and the math gets interesting fast. Here's the counter-argument you'll hear floating around the betting forums. These same two squads played a sluggish, grinded-out affair just 9 days ago. Lots of late-game free throws, not much flow, and the scoreboard never reached the higher side of any reasonable number. Real concern, no question. But the context around that game has shifted in ways that matter. The unit Portland trotted out on May 18th has been reworked since, with developmental signings now baked into the rotation and emphasis on pushing tempo that wasn't fully clicking a couple weeks back, and a clear feel for which sets actually generate clean looks at home. 3 of Portland's first 4 home games this season cleared 180 in total points, with the lone exception coming against this same Sun team early in the schedule when neither side had quite figured itself out yet. Wednesday night basketball after travel days tends to come unglued. Defensive intensity drops a notch. Rotations show up a half step late. Add a sold-out home crowd that's been promised a show, a roster built to give them one, and a visiting side with absolutely zero interest in playing slow keep-away basketball, and the path to the higher side of this number runs through roughly 3 quarters before anyone has to start sweating. As our second pick for this matchup, over the projected total is our full game total pick. Washington Mystics versus Seattle Storm. The Mystics are limping toward the finish line of a brutal 4-game swing on the road, and they just got absolutely handled by this very same Seattle squad 3 nights ago on the very same floor. That kind of deja vu matters in this league more than people realize. Washington has dropped back-to-back games heading into this one, and asking a young roster to fly across the country, eat a 12-point loss, hang around the same hotel for 2 more days, and then suddenly flip the script in the rematch is honestly a tall ask. The Storm, on the other hand, are riding a little wave of momentum after snapping their 3-game skid against Connecticut, and now they have stacked a second straight win heading into tonight. Confidence is a real currency in early season basketball, especially for a roster still trying to figure itself out under a brand new head coach. Honestly, the bigger story here is the matchup of styles. Seattle's staff has been preaching ball movement and shot making, and Washington's defense, which has been leaking close to 90 points a night, just could not keep a body in front of anyone on Sunday. With Awafam settling into the rotation faster than just about anyone expected and the home bench finally finding some pop, the Storm have more answers now than they did even a week ago. Sure, the historical against the number trend over the past several meetings leans Washington's way, and that is absolutely worth flagging, but trends tend to die fast when one team has clearly outclassed the other in the most recent meeting. Stack on top of that the simple human element of the Mystics finishing a coast-to-coast travel grind tonight while Seattle has been parked at Climate Pledge Arena for days, sleeping in their own beds, and the math just keeps tilting the same direction. As our first pick for this matchup, the Seattle Storm to cover the spread as underdogs is our full game side pick. The first meeting between these two teams just 3 nights ago was a full-on track meet that left the scoreboard absolutely cooked, and a result like that rarely happens by accident. Seattle absolutely lit up from beyond the arc on Sunday, knocking down a season-high number of threes and parading to the foul line in a way Washington simply could not handle. When a defense gives up that many easy looks, it is almost always a sign that the matchup is broken on a fundamental level, not a one-night fluke. Washington also does not have the rim protection most people assume they do once you peek past the box score. They are young, they are long, but they are also figuring out rotations on the fly and have surrendered a heap of second chance opportunities to anyone willing to crash the glass. Seattle, for its part, finally seems to be discovering that it can actually score. The new staff has them playing with more freedom and pace than their early season numbers would suggest, and once a team finds its rhythm from outside, the points really do pile up in a hurry. There is a counter-argument lurking here, of course, and it would be unfair not to mention it. Several recent head-to-head meetings between these franchises have settled on the quieter side, and Seattle did spend the early part of this year stuck firmly in the offensive mud. But the most recent data point absolutely blew that pattern apart, and it did not look like a one-off either. It looked like a team finally figuring out who it wants to be, with both rosters still leaning heavily on young players who do not always defend with discipline, and with neither side having a true paint deterrent for this rematch. The scoreboard should keep humming well into the fourth quarter. As our second pick for this matchup, over the projected total is our full game total pick. That's all for now, so if you have any other games you would like reviewed, then leave a comment down below with the game you would like analyzed, subscribe to our channel, leave a like on this video, and we'll get to it as soon as we possibly can. We would also love to hear your opinion on the picks presented to you in this video, whether you agree or disagree with them, so leave a comment down below and do let us know.